This is the Iron Sharpens Iron Movement, sharing insights into the power of people-centric leading.
Hi, this is Jim, and today we welcome to our tribe a serial entrepreneur who has created over $15 billion, with a B, in net worth from companies he has started. As one of the pioneers of telemedicine, he helped create what is now a $250 billion industry. The lessons learned from building over 13 companies are reflected in his best-selling book, Broken Handoff, a book that educates entrepreneurs, human capital experts, and investors. He'll help you avoid the potholes. This is Michael Gorton. Iron Sharpens Iron Movement is brought to you by N2 Growth, a leader in executive search, leadership development, and talent management. We find and develop the world's best leaders. Learn more about our practice by visiting us at n2growth.com or click on the link in the show notes of this podcast. Michael, welcome to the Iron Sharpens Iron Movement. I tell you, we are really excited to have you here today. An entrepreneur of your status and as much as you've seen is going to bring a lot of value to the tribe. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
As we've read the bio, you're a serial entrepreneur, you're an adventurer, you're an author. There's 1,000 things that we can talk to. I'd love to know, kind of right off the bat, what started this sense of adventure, this sense of always trying to find the unknown? Kind of, where were you on this transformational journey, even as a young boy? What was your sense of curiosity? What drove you that way?
Well, who knows? It could be
just fair.
Dad just raised me right. You're military, and my dad was military, so there's part of it. But when I was a young kid, in the middle of the night in the Philippines, I watched Neil and Buzz step out on the moon, and something triggered. Everybody in the house was asleep. I was awake, and I thought, wow. This is probably one of the most historic events in the history of mankind. And I'm just sitting here all by myself in the living room watching. And I thought, I need to do that someday.
Wow. I wonder if, when you were just talking about that, it's kind of almost like one of the first social media moments that we've had, even though it was on a television screen, but to see that and to say, I want to do that. And you saw it live, it's just, I wonder how many moments in time nobody sat there and watched, Christopher Columbus, stepping foot and all those kind of things, and the impact it's probably had on the thousands and thousands of people that watched that live. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, can you imagine? Who was it? Ferdinand and Isabella. They probably waved to Columbus and go, "Yeah, we'll probably never see that guy again."
Absolutely right. Just all of those points of time. If you could go back, well, that's kind of a cool place to start too. When I was researching you a little bit, I have not had the chance to read one of the books that you did very well on. Is Forefathers and the Founding Fathers. I know it's a historical fiction, but there was probably a lot on there. What motivated you to do that book? How close to it of reality is it? What was kind of your point of doing something like that? And the lessons, I guess, out of history that you'd like to bring forward to challenge us on?
Well, it's 100% reality. When I was growing up, my dad always told me stories about a forefather that we had who was always in trouble in the early colonies, who was being publicly beaten, et cetera. And I always sort of thought, one day I want to do the research and write a book. And so that's really what the book is. And what I learned was that my forefather was one of the original founders of the state of Rhode Island. And for those who know American history, Rhode Island was the outcast. Boston and Connecticut and some of the other colonies were religious theocracies, and Rhode Island wanted freedom of religion. And so, the battles between the people that started Rhode Island and the colonies around them were pretty intense in the early days. And so, it was fun writing it. And in the research, I found that Nathaniel Greene, who basically is Washington's general who won the South, is one of my cousins.
Oh,
And
wow.
anyway, it was a fascinating research project and fun to write.
Was there more than just trying to do almost your family lineage into that? What the point of the book? Were you trying to make a point, or were you just trying to expose people about how important history is and it matters, and it just put things in perspective?
It started out as just a fun project. What it ultimately became was a better understanding of where the real roots of American democracy originated. And we like to think it was the Massachusetts Bay Colony or Boston, and it really wasn't. It was Rhode Island. That tiny little state that you can run across in a couple of hours, right?
Yeah, that's true. Doesn't Rhode Island have like a funky official name? It's not just Rhode Island or something, right? There's like an extra name that's been taken off, but it's still the official name. It's something very funky about Rhode Island.
Yeah, so I don't know that one.
Uh, I'll have to do an edit on here when I go back and do the research. It's something goofy like Rhode Island and its associated island or some kind of silliness like that. I just heard something about it. Pretty funny. So so when you're sitting there and you're watching the landing and it's starting to transform you as a child into where you're going to come. Can you give us a little bit of your history yourself? And we're not trying to make this a biography of you or a history podcast of you, but I think it's important for our listeners to kind of understand that you took that motivation from watching the lunar landing and you fast forward that into becoming a pioneer almost yourself. We read about how you're a serial entrepreneur, but what is some of the things that you are most proud of that you pioneered so far in your life? And it certainly isn't over yet, is it?
Okay, so James, let's do this. This should be a point of inspiration for anybody, young or old. You see something, it inspires you, make a plan and execute on that plan. And I was really lucky. I was just beginning Boy Scouts. My scout leader was Colonel Talley. I don't know where Colonel Talley is these days, but he was an Air Force Academy grad, a C-130 pilot. And
nice.
He said, make a life plan and live that plan. And that's what I did.
That's awesome.
So, I became an engineer. I became a physicist. I got accepted in med school, and then ended up going to law school. And so all of those things came from sitting in front of that TV, getting inspired, and never giving up on that dream.
I love it. It's kind of funny. I share a lot of the same journeys too. I was instead of in Boy Scouts, I was in this organization called Civil Air Patrol. It's kind of the Air Force auxiliary. They do like search and rescue and things like that, and they have cadets. And I had an old C-130 pilot myself, favorite aircraft in the Air Force, by the way, for me. And it was the same thing. And as a matter of fact, it was interesting. At the age of 13, he enrolled me in Toastmasters. I never even heard of Toastmasters before, and he enrolls me in it, and it was like, this will help change your life, because if you want to be in the military, if you want to be a leader, you must learn to communicate well. And I didn't understand it or appreciate it at the time, but sure enough, it was probably one of the greatest moments that I had, was him helping me make this plan for the future and starting to set some of those foundations with something simple as Toastmasters. And I'll always appreciate him. And he was a colonel too, by the way.
Yeah.
Always appreciate those small little moments that completely change your life. It's and hopefully someone that's listening to this podcast will be inspired by those kind of stories too.
Yeah. And so take both sides of it, for the people that need to be inspired, please be inspired. For those that have already succeeded in things, go find somebody to inspire. Become my version of Colonel Talley.
Do you think so? What are your thoughts on that kind of servant leadership styles and stuff? Do you believe it's a bit of an obligation if you're going to ever make yourself or your organization better to constantly be giving back or looking for that extra, reach out to somebody and give another person a hand? How important do you believe that is?
It's absolutely critical. The reality is that we rise up because of the people who help us. And one of my mentors was a man named Nathan Morton, who is now gone, but he built the business model for Target, Home Depot, and CompUSA. And Nathan told me, I'm going to help you, and the only thing I want is when you're successful, you go help others.
I love that. It's a pretty simple contract when you say it, and you can only hope that people actually execute on that. It is amazing. The more power you give away, the more powerful things around you become. It is a true, I don't know what your feelings are, Michael, but to me, it's like a freeing event. When you become a servant leader and you give out to others, it makes you more free.
I totally agree with that.
I love it. So serial entrepreneur, you feel like you give back quite a bit. You've had people mentor you into that kind of mindset. One of the things that I keep reading about you is one of your favorite sayings is you help entrepreneurs miss the potholes.
Yeah.
So can talk to us a little bit about that. What are some of the things when you talk about potholes? What are some of the biggest things that you see young entrepreneurs falling into?
Well, first of all, let me say that if you live in the corporate world, you have no idea how crazy being an entrepreneur is. We have higher highs, we have lower lows. Most of the time, they happen on the same day. And so you get knocked down and kicked in the teeth a lot, you skin your knees a lot, and the thing you have to learn to be a successful entrepreneur is, first and foremost, if you're doing something important, never give up. Ever. And so I think that knocked down and kicked in the teeth a lot. What our job as successful serial entrepreneurs should be to find the young ones and make sure they don't get knocked down and kicked in the teeth too much. They have to be knocked down and kicked in the teeth. You know that because you got through the military, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's learning. But as much as we can, we should find ways to help them prevent that.
So when you're talking about that, is it more like, because one of the things that I imagine that you probably encounter quite a bit are a lot of dreamers, right? Like if you have 10 entrepreneurs and they all have the best idea, and they're all just purely believing into it, and it's just a part of their DNA. How do you start to filter through someone that's got an unrealistic dream or it's just a really bad idea, and compared to someone who's got a fantastic idea, but they just don't know how to get it across the finish line? How do you balance that? Because I'm sure it's a unique journey because you don't want to crush anybody's dreams. So how do you balance that?
I don't want to crush anybody's dreams, but I am so busy. So, for example, I've got 16 meetings today.
Wow.
That's insanity, right? But so when people come to me all the time and want help, and I have to have a filter, and my filter is basically no most of the time because I'm so busy. The only time that I will say yes is if I see some kind of spark or something totally unique, and those are worth me spending time on. Sometimes a friend will ask me to help somebody, and I'll look at it and I'll go, "Oh my gosh, what a mess!" And I'll get somebody else who's not quite as busy to help me help that individual.
Do you think it's just how much of a believer are you truly in the gut instinct? I mean, is it just through your years of experience that you just know what right looks like in a way, that spark?
no. I mean,
Okay.
frankly, James, I suck at gut instinct. Um, you know,
Okay.
uh, I try and find people around me who can help with gut instinct. Uh,
Mm.
and I think that's another part of it. You go through a process and getting to yes, and and for me, I personally have a toolkit, and one of them is some of the people around me who can help me get to yes, who can help me say yes, this person is ethical. Yes, this person is going to stay diligent.
It's well, I guess it's one of the things that has kept you successful because it probably takes a lot of the emotion out of it too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I love that. So where do you see, Michael? So if you got, you have all these people that are approaching you, you start to figure out what right looks like. What are some of the trends that you see out there, the new ideas, the new technologies that you think is starting to expose itself to where we're going to go, not even post COVID, but just, from 2020 onward? What are some of the things that really excite you out there?
Well, I can tell you about the things that I'm involved in. One of the deals that I really like, there's a company called Socrates Health that I sit on the board of, and they have what's called a non-invasive blood glucose meter. So to take
Wow.
that and make it simple, if you know a diabetic, they prick their finger 6 times a day,
Yeah, you bet.
blood to tell, and they get an instantaneous this is what my blood sugar looks like right now. So they don't know if it's trending up or trending down. And what Socrates has done is developed using optics. They shine light through the ear because the ear is pretty thin, and the blood has properties that change as a function of blood sugar. And so without pricking your finger, you can get continuous readings on the blood, trending up, trending down. And that's a
Wow.
deal that I love. And I've
Right.
been working with the entrepreneur on that company for a long time, and it's one of those deals that could change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, another thing that I'd be interested to know your point of view in is, you kind of approach these entrepreneurs with new ideas, kind of with the toolkit that you talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the human, the type of entrepreneur. What do you see are some basic characteristics of not kind of the classic definition of an entrepreneurial mindset or something like that, but what do you think a person does need to have today to be a successful entrepreneur? What are some of those core competencies that may be different today than they were when you were first coming up?
I don't know that they've changed.
Huh?
Um, you have to be creative. You have to be absolutely diligent and persistent. There's a great quote from I think the only president that Vermont produced, Calvin Coolidge, on persistence. I
Ah,
recommend everybody go research that quote. So creativity, persistence, and then to some degree, entrepreneurs can go months or years without a paycheck, and sometimes that's pretty difficult, and it makes it maybe an exclusive club. Um, but it's one of those things that you have to be prepared to do if you're going to go into it full time.
yeah, you bet. What are your thoughts on resilience then? I mean, like when you talk about, I guess you could slice off persistence and all of these kind of things and tie it into resilience. But, you're a bit of a health nut too. You're a big runner, mountain climber, all of those kind of things. Do you tie kind of your attraction to physical activity to a bit of resilience to being successful as an entrepreneur? Is there a connection there, you think?
Absolutely. I make my kids climb mountains. My wife and I created a project for the family to climb the highest point of elevation in all 50 states. And I
Hmm.
tell them when we're on these really difficult mountains, it is not about getting to the summit. It's about putting yourself into a really tough situation and figuring out how to get the mental and physical strength to get through it. A marathon is another version of that. You can't just go run a marathon. First of all, you have to train, and then mile 18 comes in the real marathon, and your body is done. You have to figure out how to get through it. And those are the kind of things, if you find people that know that are athletic in that kind of way, they do endurance things, they do impossible, difficult things, they typically can become good entrepreneurs.
That makes complete sense. I come from a world of special operations, and it's that same thing. It's that same mindset. As a matter of fact, my screensaver says "never quit," and it's all about that, right? It's about overcoming these insurmountable obstacles, because you can, as long as you don't quit, you're going to be able to make it at a certain point. And it takes a mindset, and that's why you see in special operations, in these small team environments, very successful leaders moving out, because they have this way to the yes, like you mentioned before, and you figure this out, and it's usually through kind of this assessment system in special operations. And I find that same mentality exactly how you described it, with marathon runners, mountain climbers, people that do very difficult things where it's very easy to quit on, unless you decide that this is exactly what I need to do. I have to achieve this goal. And then you come into the never quit club. And that's just a new mindset. And it's another thing that's very freeing, actually, just like being the servant leader, is to learn to never quit. How old are your kids right now, and where are you on this journey of all 50 peaks?
Oldest is 25, youngest is 15. And because of the big age difference, the older two, one of them's 21, one's 25. The older two have quite a few more summits than Lance, the youngest one. But I took Lance to Colorado, which is arguably the second hardest of the Continental 50, and he totally kicked my butt on that mountain. That was 2 weeks ago, and we had some Colorado people. So I'm in Texas. We're flatlanders. We don't have the hemoglobin that the Colorado people have. And Lance kicked the Colorado climbers' butts too. So that's good. That's what Dad wants anyway.
Yeah, awesome. That is awesome. So let's stay on some human dynamic stuff. You wrote another book called The Broken Handoff, and I know that's kind of M&A focused and all that. But in that book, you do speak of relationships and relationship management and the power of relationships and all that. Can you dive into that a little bit, Michael, about some of these lessons that you could share with us about the power of relationships, the human connection, about where it's not just a data-driven event?
Sure. So first of all, the title Broken Handoff is entrepreneurs build companies. Ultimately, they need to raise capital, and they go to venture capital to do that. Entrepreneurs tend to call venture capital vultures. But here's the thing. We need each other.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs need capital, and venture capital needs great ideas. And the handoff between the two is not being done correctly a lot of the time. And it ultimately is a human issue. If you think about the mindset of an entrepreneur, they are start it yesterday, don't take no for an answer, we'll find a solution, we'll solve it now and ask for forgiveness later. The business of the venture capital is, I have stakeholders who I've guaranteed I'm going to get the best deal possible. And sometimes that means I have to crush the entrepreneur in the path. And but also VCs, venture capital, tends to be Wharton scholars, Harvard MBAs. They're the smartest people on the planet, and they know spreadsheets really well, but they haven't really built anything. So, you put these two mindsets together, people that are absolute winners, but in very different ways, and you get clashes. And I'll give you, one of the stupidest things I ever did was a VC brought a very, very smart person to join one of my boards. And it was frustrating. And I didn't understand this whole broken handoff piece back then. And one day in a board meeting, I looked at him and I said, "You are nothing but a snot-nosed kid. You've never built anything and you don't know what the blank you're talking about." So technically, I may have been right. But I mean, think about the stupidity of saying something like that to somebody. First of all, he's smart. He's working hard. He's trying hard. And it took me a while to figure out how dumb that was for so many reasons. But at the end of the day, 70% of all M&A transactions fail. And that translates to about $3.5 trillion a year.
Wow.
$3.5 trillion a year annually. And, we've got to figure out ways to fix that. And the biggest way is to understand the human dynamics on both sides. If we can mitigate those things and understand them, we might be able to fix 10, 20% of that. And that's a big number.
That is a big number.
10% of 3.5 trillion is 350 billion.
Nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. So that was the goal of the book, was to analyze the problem, to figure out on both sides, the entrepreneur side and the venture capital side, how do we fix this?
I think that's almost the question you ask in any organization. It always seems like the fundamental breakdown, whether it's from the leadership side, the followership side, or just somewhere in the middle of the organization, is that there's a relationship breakdown. There's a misunderstanding. There's two different classes of personalities, all of those kind of things. And you would think after all of these years of realizing, I think everybody sees it, it's the elephant in the room, but nobody really works that hard to solve it because everybody is just controlled by ego. It's crazy. So, Michael, with about 5 minutes left on our podcast, I want to switch gears a little. And thank you for showing us some insight into the mind of a serial entrepreneur. But I want to switch gears just a tad bit and talk about one of the new initiatives that you're involved with that's called Back to Space. And I just watched a pretty interesting news article on it also that you shared on LinkedIn. So I'm pretty pumped up about this too. But could you tell us a little bit about the initiative Back to Space and really what are you trying to solve at the end?
Well, Back to Space is my passion project. I get so excited about the opportunities and the potential here. And everything that you and I have been talking about, James, thus far is all about inspiring people. In 5 minutes, we can't cover it. But let me tell you about a little project that we're working on that started with a little spark of an idea and has now become something Guinness Book of World Records caliber. So we decided to do some rocket launch competitions for kids and adults that are building Estes style rockets. They go 800 feet up or a few thousand feet up. Nice. And we thought, okay, how hard is it to launch a rocket and have it fall on a specific point? So we got one of the guys who walked on the moon, a guy named Charlie Duke, who just coincidentally is the Texan of the Year. He walked on the Dakar Highlands in 1972, which is awesome. Right on the center of the part of the moon that we can see from Earth. And we said, could you, if we made a really big map, could you walk out on that map and put an X and say, I challenge you to land here, like I did in 1972. So, we started thinking about, okay, how big can our map be? And I love Google, right? You can click. Okay, what's the largest map on the planet? Turns out, we think of these maps. I got one on the wall behind me. It's 15 square feet, right? Mm-hmm. So the largest map on the planet, which is probably really not a map at all, is about 20,000 square feet. And so I called my civil engineer friends and I said, if I want to beat that, how expensive is it? And gosh. We're about to build in Jacksboro, Texas, a 25,500 square foot map of the moon.
How the heck do you even begin doing that?
So it starts out as a giant concrete slab. And so, we're going to have all kinds of software. So virtual reality, augmented reality, but it starts out as a concrete slab. And then you have to paint the moon on the surface. So that brings up another problem. Okay, entrepreneurs, how do we paint an image of the moon on 25,000 square feet?
Right.
It's a difficult problem. And we thought, well, we could bring art students in and give them a quadrant and everybody paint it. And would it look good? I don't know. But then we decided, let's invent a printer that can do that. So, what is an inkjet printer? It drops little particles of or little droplets of ink. But inkjet printers are locked down. The sheet of paper moves underneath them. What if we take the sheet of paper, get rid of it, and put wheels instead?
Huh.
So now we have something that's going to roam around on this 25,000 square foot concrete mat. And, okay, I'm getting really excited about this, James, because it's cool. Nobody's ever done this before. But here's the thing that now driving around printer has to be accurate to 1/150th of an inch, right? Because we're printing an image, and the image has to be 150 dots per inch.
Yeah.
That means that the printer has to be that accurate. And so where do you go to do this? A giant engineering firm? Yes, of course. Except that Back to Space has these kids that are the smartest kids on the planet. And they said, we want to do it. And in the beginning, I went, no, you can't do this. This is a job for a giant engineering firm. And they reminded me that Oculus was built by a 16-year-old. And I went, okay, guys, have that.
Oh my gosh.
Now I've got these, 15 to 20-year-old kids that are going to have a prototype Labor Day weekend. So I'm really excited about the fact that, we get to do what you and I have been talking about all this time, inspire something, and they're going to get to create something that's never been done before.
That is awesome. I mean, how inspiring is that to be a young adult and have a blank canvas and say, all right, here's the goal, go for it, and just try to achieve it. And they're already at the prototype. That's awesome. That is. So is it controlled by, is it GPS? Is it radio frequency? How do you keep it, or do you not even know yet until they bring it out?
I do know, but I'm not going to tell right now. But the solution they came up with was absolute brilliance. I guarantee you, the engineering firm that I was going to go to would not have done this with this much brilliance.
That's awesome.
So I'm really excited to see, and I'm expecting a painting on my driveway in Labor Day weekend.
I was going to say, it probably does open another industry to doing things like that.
Oh,
there's no doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, this is about to become the biggest paint job in the world. But now think about any parking lot, any runway, any giant concrete slab, or even the concrete slab in somebody's study. If they want to paint their great grandfather's log cabin on it. Now we can put an image into a printer that free roams and paints.
Yeah, for some reason, I have a crazy image of like a car dealership, because they've got those large concrete slabs in their showrooms, and I could just see all kinds of things painted on there now and all. That's crazy. It's amazing.
Well, I'm looking forward to the first crazy millionaire who wants to paint something so big that you can see it from the International Space Station.
So someone will take you up on that. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
So when you say it's Guinness Book worthy, how serious are you? Have you already told them and said, when we go to do this, I want you out there to certify it and all of that?
Yeah. So, we're going to have Guinness come out. We're going to have a lot of the guys who walked on the moon. Well, actually, there were 12 people who walked on the moon. 4 of them are still alive. And 28 or so that went to the moon, 13 are still alive. So we're going to have a lot of the Apollo guys there.
Wow.
We'll have Guinness there, and a lot of other inspired and again, it's not just going to be a concrete slab with the moon painted on it, although that's pretty extraordinary. We're going to have software so you can walk out on the moon and step into a virtual reality space where you can explore where Neil and Buzz landed and actually walk around and see the footprints and get a selfie with Neil or Buzz. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And do you believe this is one of your ways to give back to when you were that young boy sitting watching a TV in the Philippines on one of the greatest moments in history? Is this another example of how you feel like you're going to give back? Because don't you believe there's going to be an 8 or 9-year-old boy or a girl that walks out on that concrete and becomes inspired by science and engineering?
I want them to know that when I was in the Philippines, my dad was a sergeant and we barely made our bills. And now Buzz Aldrin, who walked on the moon, is my friend. So you want to talk about impossible dreams? I want them to understand that, yes, I want you to be inspired, and I want you to realize that if Elon Musk is your hero, maybe someday you'll collaborate with him on a project. Anything is possible if you focus and work hard and be creative.
Couldn't agree more. And it takes people like you to be a voice and a beacon, everybody's North Star, to say that anybody can do this, and to be able to point to someone like you and say, it's proof. It's not just all words. It is actions. And it takes a lot to get there. There's no doubt about that. And a lot of sacrifice, but it can be achieved. Michael, I can't thank you enough for spending this quick amount of time with us, because this small amount of time is going to leave a very large impact to the listening audience, because I believe it, I feel it. And in particular, the Back to Space project, the level of excitement that's in your voice just went up 10x when we started to talk about this, and it certainly is inspirational. So I'd love to leave you with the last word for our audience on really anything that you would like us to be inspired to think about in the near future.
Well, let me add one more thing to Back to Space.
Sure.
We are going to have an impact. We want multiple kids to be inspired, but Back to Space is a for-profit company. And so we're going to do both. We're going to make money for our stakeholders, and we're going to inspire people. But for the listening audience out there, I would say this. If you have a great idea, I'm happy for you to reach out to me. There's nothing better than, being able to help the next generation or the next great idea. So I'm happy to do that. And for everybody else out there, be persistent. Go look up that Calvin Coolidge quote on persistence, and hang it on your desk and live it every day.
I love it. Michael, thanks for challenging us to be persistent, challenging us to dream as big as we can dream, and thanks for being a great example. Thanks for joining the Iron Sharpens Iron movement today.
Thanks, James.
Thanks for joining our leadership movement this week. Talking to Michael in this fast-paced interview was really revealing about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur in today's world. To be honest, I really can't wait to see the finished product on his world record mapping project of the moon. It's going to be pretty cool. Don't forget, our show notes are posted on the website with key leader takeaways. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast and tell a friend so we can continue to build the tribe. Until next time, remember that iron sharpens iron. Make yourself and others around you better every single day.